Happy Thursday afternoon. Let's see here. Got to fix the tab. There we go. Hi. I hope you're having a great Thursday. If you saw any of my tweets earlier, you know that I've been a little preoccupied with Matilda. In fact, I just tweeted out a picture. She is laying in her bed in a manner like she's never laid in it before. It's so sad. It's so pathetic. I feel so bad for her. It was a rough go, but thank you for all of your concerns that you've expressed for the little Cheagle. She's struggling right now, but she's hopefully on the mend now. So I appreciate you guys thinking about her. Okay, my goodness. If you missed last week, we had a lot to talk about with the Blaze reporter, Steve Baker. My goodness, the FBI. What's going on over there? Please revisit that if you haven't seen it. It's pinned to the top. All of the shows that we do here are pinned to the top. We do it Thursdays at 3 p.m. We do a deep dive Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern. We just hang out and watch animal videos together. And I have a guest today. This will be her fourth appearance on the Thursday deep dive. And I've got a lot of questions for her as well. So stand by for Colonel Roxanne Towner-Watkins, who we've got a lot of ground to cover here. Okay, before I forget, shout out to Wes at that guy at PGU. Please follow him because he makes the magic happen over at themikeshow.com. And then, of course, Gabby handles Instagram at Jeffy Apologist on X. And I don't know if you saw the tweet, but if you subscribe for $2 a month here on X, I decided by this weekend at the latest. And I don't know how to do this random drawing, but I need to give away one of these at the Mike Show winter caps. I think it's a $7,000 value, and I'm even going to pay for the shipping too. Something that's a rough estimate. So be sure to sign up, and we'll do a drawing. I'll figure it out. Okay. Now, someone else you need to go and subscribe to, the Colonel's Corner over on Rumble. Hello, Colonel. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fine. That's the fourth time you've been on. My goodness. I know you've been on to talk about Operation Gladio the last time. And that was a two-parter. Again, pinned to the top here. And then we talked about Operation PatCon, which we're going to get back into again today. But I moved this conversation up a week because I had a lot of questions for you of things that have been happening in the news. And then after you graciously agreed to move it up a week, I had even more questions. There's been so much in the news cycle, and every one of these stories that I've been seeing makes me think, okay, that's a good question for the Colonel. I got to write that down. So we've got a lot to talk about. But I do want to remind everyone, follow you at Rumble at the Colonel's Corner, and also on X. It's at Colonel. See, it just auto-completes. It just auto-completes for me whenever I type it. It's what at Colonel Watkins, what is it?
Colonel Towner.
Colonel Towner. See, look, I guessed wrong. I knew I was going to do that wrong. Okay, so there you go. Be sure to follow her because you post some great stuff. Okay. Where to begin? You know, the world is it was a very strange, and I think because it was such a positive feeling earlier this week with the hostages being released from Hamas and the peace deal getting signed. I think the reason it felt strange is because we're not used to coming together anymore. And so it was a unique situation in Egypt where all of the world leaders got together and did their photo op with President Trump, and the peace deal was signed. Well, first, let me ask you this. What is your gut with your military background? What is it? How are you feeling about this peace deal? Do you think this is going to hold? Do you, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. How are you feeling about the long-term peace deal?
I think the long-term, it will hold, but there are vested interests around the world that do not want it to hold.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. But so are you anticipating some difficulties ahead? Because you just said you think it will hold, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be easy.
Well, if going back to the roots of Operation Gladio, which basically began in the immediate aftermath of World War II, the entire concept was strategy of tension. And you keep tension levels high in order to keep people divided. And that has been part and parcel of the last 80 years. And there are a lot of what I call the international syndicate that have become billionaires off of that instability, whether it's the military industrial complex, whether it's bankers, whether it's chemical companies, big pharma. They all have a vested interest in keeping the strategy of tension alive. And that normally involves false flags. And so if you understand that's their mode of operation, you can't discount that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Frankly speaking, peace does not make them money.
I know, man. That's the thing. That's the thing. Oh, war is profitable.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's go back a couple of years here to what really started the culmination of the peace deal on Monday, and that was the attack, the incursion into Israel by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. Boy, time, man. Time. Well, don't tell that to the hostages or the families. I was about to say time flies. Certainly not for them. But there's been this nagging feeling that started not too long after the initial attack of October 7th. There were reports, and I read this very long article of the all-female IDF force that's stationed there at the border. That was my first sign of a problem. Was this article talked at length with quotes from these female soldiers that reference passing along important information about Hamas activities along the border leading up to October 7th in that terrible attack. And so it's been a nagging thing since that time. But since that time, there's been other reports, and I'd like you to get into them. And I guess my ultimate question, from what you know and what you've learned over the past 2 years, what was there a stand down order, or was it just gross incompetence?
So historically, if you look at these events, they are all, and by events, I'm referring to, I'm going to use the word false flags. Some people will be upset by that. But these terrorist events that happen are orchestrated, and that's what the entire premise of Operation Gladio is. Operation Gladio, for decades, was the government's creating their own mercenaries, terrorists, training them and hiding them from the public to create bombings, attacks, assassinations. And if you look historically, there's always something that the government wants to distract you from that calls for these attacks to happen. For example, in Italy, where again most people think of Operation Gladio, some of the attacks were passed off as being conducted by communists, when in fact it was conducted by the government in order to push people into voting the right way. So if you look at what was going on around the time frame, Bibi Netanyahu was being charged with crimes. What happened in the immediate aftermath of the attack? Well, they quote unquote went to war, and all of those charges was postponed. So if you have indictments hanging over your head for criminal acts, and you know as long as the war perpetuates, they're not going to act on those indictments, does he have an incentive to create a false flag? Yes. And if you look at the history of Hamas, most people are unaware of the fact that Hamas was originally created by Israel to attack the PLO. There was funding that was channeled, let's say that, channeled through other Arab states. Most people are very unaware of the very close relationship, intelligence-wise, that Saudi Arabia had for decades with Israel. They look at them as polar opposites. One's Muslim, one's Jewish, and supposedly they're at war all the time with each other. And yet that was one of their closest allies in intelligence sharing in the region. Jordan has been under the control of the UK forever. Now, those of us who have done research, because none of this is classified information, understand that the intelligence apparatus that Israel has would never allow for the planning of an event like October 7th to occur without them knowing about it. It defies logic. There were other warnings that came from other Arab states. So there, under no circumstances would you ever convince me that it was done without their knowing.
Yeah, I don't know of multiple Arab states, but I know for a fact Egypt warned Israel before it occurred. And I feel like maybe the Biden administration, I may be wrong on that one. I'm not going to go forward with that comment.
But think about this. We have CIA intelligence analysts at every embassy around the world. Did they all miss it?
That's what I'm saying. It's for Israel, for a nation that prides itself on its ability to defend itself. You would anticipate it would be on high alert around the clock, and rightfully so. And then when you have a specific, as I referenced earlier, that all-female battalion stationed there, warning well ahead of time of what was happening along the border, and they transmitted this clearly up the chain. It really begins to, because we don't want to believe that they let this happen, or they knew this was going to happen, and then when it did happen, for 6 hours there wasn't an official response from the government. And then when you look at the reasoning behind that, it's, oh well, Hamas took control of the highways and blocked that, and there was some difficulties with. Go ahead.
There's nothing about it that makes sense.
Right.
And we don't want to believe that our government was behind 9/11 either. But here we are.
Look, what did President James Garfield, who had a whole 6 months in office before he was assassinated, he was on a great trajectory, I'll tell you that, for a great presidency. He might have ended up on Mount Rushmore, other than, say, Teddy Roosevelt. But he said, "The truth shall set you free, but first it will make you miserable." And I feel that that's where we're at with so many things. And this one stinks too. In fact, you had a Sky News article that here's a quote from it. Let's see. In exclusive interviews with Sky News, one of Yasser Abu Shabab's senior commanders and an IDF soldier serving on the Gaza border detailed how Israel is allowing them to smuggle cash, guns, and cars into Gaza. Israel is allowing this.
Correct.
Experts say that Israel's support for such groups is intended to divide and conquer, and to ensure that it maintains a level of control in Gaza, whatever its future. And as you pointed out, that is Operation Gladio.
That is
in
correct.
The Gaza Strip.
Yes. But I've also come to the conclusion, after 3 years of reading this stuff nonstop, that there is not any organic terrorist. None. If you do the history on any recognizable terrorist organization, whether it's ISIS, the U.S. created it, out of the Mujahideen, which we created.
Which, I mean, yes, I'm sitting here thinking of 9/11 and Afghanistan and Al Qaeda.
Okay, so Al Qaeda was derived from the Mujahideen, which we created. The Muslim Brotherhood was created in the early 1900s in Egypt to control Egypt for the UK because of the canal. So there's no organic terrorism. If you've got a terrorist organization, and in hindsight, you can go back and track the money, which I've done extensively for the last 3 years, you come to the conclusion that there's no organic terror. And let me just throw out an example for people to understand this. We're supposed to believe that, and I know we'll get to this later, but Venezuela is this narco-terrorist country. But 80% of the cocaine in America comes from Colombia, not Venezuela. It originates in Colombia. And at the beginning of this, in the 1970s, there was basically two quote unquote cartels, which is a term they began using then, the Cali cartel and the Medellin cartel. Well, the Medellin cartel decided that, and both was under CIA observation. They had CIA assets there. The DEA knew all about it, everything. We found out in Contra that all of those U.S. agencies was literally involved in the trafficking of cocaine into the United States to raise money for the Contras. So that's a proven fact. But what most people don't know is the Medellin cartel began operating outside of the jurisdiction of the CIA. Pablo Escobar had decided that it was much more profitable for him to knock out all of the Cuban exile points of contact where they were supposed to deliver all the cocaine in Miami. So he sent up a bunch of people to kill him. And I mean, literally almost daily, you would find a Cuban exile dead in the streets in Miami. It was total chaos. And that pissed the CIA off because that was their contacts. So what did they do? They assassinated Pablo Escobar. So if you can go into a foreign country and knock out a guy that's not doing what you want them to do, you're not the bumbling intelligence agency that they'd like you to believe whenever you run across and expose something that they're involved in. And so that goes back to Israel. They're not a bumbling intelligence agency.
Right.
They don't make mistakes like leaving an entire section of their border unguarded.
Yeah, I know. And I'm looking here at the IDF did a major inquiry on this, as I'm sure you know, where they've admitted a complete failure to protect civilians. Yeah, but Shin Bet,
we made it. We admitted a complete failure after 9/11 because of all of these stovepipes.
Yeah, I swear, as you're talking, I'm thinking we're gonna have to do a 9/11 show with her. Okay, but the equivalent to our FBI acknowledged having Hamas's detailed battle plans, codenamed Jericho Wall, for over a year in advance, but dismissed them as unrealistic. It just they want us to have this suspension of belief.
They want you not to use your brain.
Right. There was something else that I wanted to ask you about this attack. Oh, there was an investigation. Let's see, what was it here? I guess I don't have it here. Well, anyway, there was the High Court, I guess it was, said there should be an investigation, Netanyahu, into the failures and exactly what the catastrophic failures were. And Netanyahu has resisted that to this point, so we'll see where that goes. Let's see here. Oh yeah, here we go. High Court. Let's see. Yeah, no real. Yeah, the High Court says there's no real argument against this inquiry. And of course, Netanyahu was doing his best to block anything from being sussed out about what happened. But yeah, it was just disorganization in the highest levels. It wasn't anything other than just gross negligence, no orders to stand down. Which, again, to your point, when your survival depends on your
Correct.
ability to defend every inch of your territory, there, it's come on. Israel is it's walled off from the fire ant mounds, basically on all sides. And you're gonna tell me you're gonna take turn your back there? I don't think so. Not if it's not. It just stinks, man. It just stinks. Okay. I don't know if you want to talk anymore on the October 7th attack. It's going to be interesting to see if there is any real inquiry at the highest levels of the Israeli government and if this thing actually goes anywhere.
Well, you mentioned in your note to me about the Hannibal Directive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So talk to us about what the Hannibal Directive is exactly. And
Well, it basically says that they will sacrifice their own people to be able to control the surrounding area. And isn't that Operation Gladio? That's the very definition of Operation Gladio.
And so the Hannibal Directive, even when scoped down to the heat of the battle, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a case where let's say there's a terrorist dragging away innocent Israeli civilians. Is that the IDF soldier in that case can open fire and kill the innocent Israelis just to keep them from being bargaining chips as hostages, correct?
That's my understanding of it. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, the people that are being drug away would tend to, in order to implement it, would tend to have information that Israel doesn't want shared.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I gotcha.
But the bottom line is, it's a way in which gives them justification to sacrifice innocent civilians in order to gain territory. So here we are.
Oh, good stuff. Okay, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that to see where we go with the October 7th. What did they know and when did they know it fallout? Okay, there's another Middle Eastern country, Qatar. It was in the news a week ago today. My gosh, time, man. It just seems like that seems forever ago. And it was only 7 days that we were breaking that news with Pete Hegseth appearing with the Qatari official and signing over the agreement that would put Qatar at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. Now, my gut reaction and the gut reaction of many people that are like-minded to me on X were freaking out. Because I was saying how if Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris had done this, we would be calling them traitors. We would be. And in fact, there was a clip that was circulating from 2017 where President Trump was calling out Qatar's funding of terrorist organizations. And I know he has some thoughts separately on that. Now, and before I just turn you loose on this topic, I will admit that I'm not a military guy. I don't know. I don't understand the chess that could be being played here. But holy crap, it felt bad on its surface. And in my limited research there, just after that signing, I did see that, okay, we have quite a few presence of foreign military on our soil. And the thing about those, though, Colonel, is that they struck me as kind of NATO allies, Western European for the most part. But somebody did actually send me, and I'm looking for that list right now, a list of countries, and it's not just Western Europe. And I thought, well, there's another thing to talk to the Colonel about. Help me understand from my civilian point of view why this feels like a bad thing, but Not necessarily, huh? Because you're not freaking out about it as a former Air Force colonel.
Well, I spent from 1980 to 1984-ish, 83, as a tech school instructor, instructing Egyptians, Libyans, Saudi Arabia in aircraft maintenance. So we have, for at least since the 60s. So let's go back to when this whole deal started. In 2016, October of 2016, Barack Obama agreed that if Qatar would buy Boeing aircraft, normal commercial aircraft, he would throw in F-15s in order to sweeten the deal to get them bought from the US instead of other European competitors. He did that in October of 2016. And more, so if you understand the length of time for these contracts and all of the details that have to be worked out. So we have in the military a foreign sales office. And there's an entire logistics tell that comes along with military aircraft, the maintenance of them, spare parts, all of that stuff. So would you rather have someone who, let's just say Qatar is neutral, would you rather have them flying US military aircraft that you can cut off by not supplying them spare parts for, or would you rather have them being bought from China, where you have no control over it, the supply chain at all? So there's a lot of calculations that normal people don't factor in. So the agreement was basically in concept agreed upon. All of the paperwork takes years, as we just saw. So now we're up to the point in this process where they are signing the agreement. And that is just a drop in the bucket compared to all of the steps that happened before this. This has been ongoing since 2016, almost 10 years, to say that they are going to break ground. A U.S. contractor will build a facility that is co-located with the Singaporean, which is 20% Muslim too, for all of those people that are screaming, oh my God, why do we want more Muslims in the United States? That is going to train pilots at an existing Air Force base. So all of the initial was meant to create an uproar, strategy of tension, that said that they were going to build a base on US soil. There is no government in the world that has a base on US soil. There are many governments that have a facility on a US base, and they are going to train F-15 pilots. And they're like, well, oh, just go train them over there. Well, you could do that, but they're not going to buy our aircraft, because if they had to go and replicate everything at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Qatar, it would be billions of dollars, because it's all the simulators, it's all of the other maintenance and all of that other stuff that is going to be required. And not to mention the fact that you're going to talk about thousands of US military people having to be assigned in that country, in addition to the 10,000 that is already there. So we have had Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar since the 1990s. It is the forward deployed headquarters of US Central Command. As much as everybody wants to say that they're basically an enemy of the United States, they've never been an enemy of the United States. Literally, the four-star general's forward deployed headquarters for all Middle East activity is located in Qatar, as well as 10,000 military people. So these people that say, oh, we'll just go train them over there. Well, your ass isn't going over there. You're not the one that's going to have to do a 3-year assignment over there in aircraft maintenance, in pilots, or anything else. Plus, it defeats the purpose of having what is a mill-to-mill, meaning military-to-military exchange. One of the most underreported aspects of all of this recent activity with the peace deal is the senior military officials meeting originally to work out all of the details of this. And they're meeting at the same time the politicians. Well, how do you think they met those people? They met them because those countries come to the United States for professional military education, for civilian education, and to learn how to fly. I'm still keeping contact with the Saudi guy that was in my class at Air War College. So those military to military exchanges reap long-term benefits of being able to pick up the phone and call to find out if, hey, I'm hearing this. What's the deal over there?
Mm-hmm.
There are significant long-term benefits to Americanize or at least expose foreigners to America. Obviously not in Portland, but in general, it is very beneficial to America to have that happen.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, you just kind of answered the question there. What's the objective for Qatar and Idaho? And it sounds like so that we have, I guess, an ally in the Middle East that other than just Israel.
So let's talk about the terror funding.
Oh yeah, back in 2017, Donald Trump said he talked about how Qatar is linked to terrorism funding. So what's changed in the last 8 years in his perspective?
Well, actually, a lot has changed. If you go back and look at the Saudi sword dance that happened in Saudi Arabia, and they turned over the entire house of Saud by imprisoning the prince, the princess, a plural, not princess as in a female. Sure. But everything in the Middle East has changed. There has been a lot of diplomatic overtures to all of the Middle East countries and to separate them. And let me also say something about the funding. Interestingly enough, if you go back and look at the funding of terrorism in general, there's been no bigger source of funding of terrorism at large than the United States.
I knew that's how that sentence was going to end.
None. The CIA has funded more terrorism around the world. NATO, aggregately, has funded, it's the leading sponsor of terrorism around the world.
And you know what? When our checks aren't paying for the terrorism, we go and do the terrorism ourselves. I'm talking about particular natural gas pipelines in the North Sea. But anyway, continue.
So if you look at it that way, and I want to highlight the banking system, because the CIA purposely sets up banks in particular countries in order to be able to funnel money anonymously to wherever they want. And do you know who has egg on their face at the end of the day? The country that hosts that bank. So without going and looking at the bank records of where the actual funding comes from, you have no idea who is making deposits. And let me just give you an example. The Bank of Commerce, let me get this right, it's BCCI, Credit and Commerce International. It was supposedly a quote unquote Pakistani bank, but it was actually registered in Luxembourg and ran out of the city of London. But do you know what everybody called it whenever it went belly up in the 90s? A Pakistani bank. The only thing Pakistani about it was the guy that was running it. And it was financially propped up by the United Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is channeling money. I mean, they were the funders behind bin Laden, along with the CIA. So have we ever attacked Saudi Arabia? Have we ever told Saudi Arabia they can't send their pilots here? No. We have the second largest bank or Air Force base in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. So the outrage of this was formulated and as an obstacle to the Trump administration, because there's literally no basis for the outrage.
Yeah, I did find a comment from S. Jones that I was looking for earlier, who he sent me a note that just said, I can tell you from firsthand experience that there are Saudis, Jordanians, Norwegians, and Swiss, and many more countries that send their military to helicopter flight training at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Those are just the ones that I can remember in my class alone. So yeah. Again, the knee-jerk reaction from us uneducated civilians is definitely a lot different than the perspective of military types such as Mr. Jones, such as you, and others that I've heard in the past week. And so that's actually very comforting to hear it explained like that.
They have an entire complex of buildings at Maxwell Air Force Base, which is the home of the Air Force professional military education, that is dedicated to international students because they have unique needs when they come to the United States.
It would seem, just on the surface, again, from a civilian's point of view, that having this representation at U.S. military bases and that connection with those governments, it seems like that would do more for goodwill among nations than us, sending the CIA in covertly to these countries to destabilize them.
Well, let me point something else out.
Okay.
As it relates to this subject, I can't emphasize enough that you're not even talking about the normal people in their military. So let's just say Qatar's Air Force is 1,000 people. Mm-hmm. Most of the royal family will spend some time, just like in the UK and the few other places that we have royal families still existing. They will have relatives, they will have nephews and cousins. Those are the people that are selected. You don't send the run-of-the-mill peasant to learn how to fly an F-15 in the United States. So you're not talking about the normal Qatari that is, part of Hamas coming into the United States. You're talking about because they're going to grow up and be in charge of the military.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you think that there was some speculation that maybe this Qatar in Idaho was part of the peace deal? Have you seen anything to lend?
It was absolutely not. I told you, it started in 2016.
Yeah. No. Okay. Very good. Okay. So can we now talk about something that President Trump discussed yesterday at the White House when he was asked about the CIA's involvement in Venezuela? He did not deny the New York Times report that was referencing that. In fact, he effectively confirmed it. So my question to you, because I know you're a big fan of the CIA too, what are we doing? And are we playing games with Maduro's mind, or do you think, because I feel like a president, even if we are doing covert operations in Venezuela or some country that we're not getting along with, while it's on brand for us as a nation to go and meddle like that, do you think that that's definitely happening?
So, such an interesting topic. We could probably have a whole show on this. Mm-hmm. Venezuela specifically, there was a coup orchestrated under the Trump administration, under the tutelage of Bolton with Guaido during his first administration. So
that's the guy who, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that the guy that we say legitimately won the election? Am I messing that up?
Okay. Yes. He was announced as, he was announced by the United States as the winner of the election.
Right.
And there were CIA people in Venezuela at the time to overthrow the government, and forcibly put him in the seat. Now, my perspective is I don't give a crap who's president. Under no circumstances should the CIA be regime changing, period.
Agreed. 100%.
I thought what was done in 2017 was absolutely ridiculous. And on record, saying it was absolutely ridiculous. We should not be doing that. But I thought it was very interesting in 2017 that supposedly our election equipment in the United States came from people in Venezuela. So
I know.
How do you have an illegitimate election in Venezuela so that you can declare the person not elected that was elected and the guy that wasn't elected, and it's a corrupt election, while you come up to 2020 and say that those machines work perfectly? Well, if they're corruptible, they're corruptible. So explain that to me. You can't. And so one of two things is true. Either Venezuela's election was corrupt and so was ours, or neither one of them was.
We are of the same mind on this. I kind of had the same thought. I haven't articulated it the same way, but yes, isn't that ironic?
So I have never, in all of the research that I've done, ever heard a president acknowledge that he's using the CIA to overthrow a government. Ever. So to me, this is almost like a test for people paying attention. If you do not call out, as a Trump supporter, and I am, if you do not call out how wrong this is, you haven't learned a damn thing in the last 10 years. Because it's wrong no matter who's doing it. It's not okay just because it's Trump doing it. It's still wrong. And everybody needs to say that it's wrong. Not because you don't like Trump, but because it's wrong. You have to have principles. And it's almost like he's flagrantly telling everybody this has been going on for 80 years. He is exposing how this works. Why else would you announce to the world, hey, I got the CIA down there taking care of this? That's never happened.
And that's why I say it I don't know. I don't know what to believe about the CIA possibly being involved in Venezuela. I'm not calling the president a liar. I'm wondering if he is playing head games with Maduro, because here's the tragedy in all of this is if we do have a CIA presence in that country, and if they get caught, captured, killed, what have you, whether it has anything to do with President Trump saying what he said yesterday in the Oval Office, it's going to be linked to him, that this tragedy only occurred because now Venezuela was looking for our agents down there because the president tipped off Maduro. And that's one aspect of this I would just kind of put on the shelf and just keep in mind as this thing progresses, if it does progress. But to your point, this doesn't seem like something that we would necessarily expect from this administration, but that feels naive to say that in the same breath. So I don't know what to believe on this, but it's going to be fascinating to watch. It's just that we have been conditioned to believe it, like you said, if you're paying attention, then you know that our CIA is doing this and doing this repeatedly around the world. In fact, I tweeted out just a rough list, and I had you in mind in today's show when I posted this yesterday. I said, here are a few examples of brilliant CIA engineered coup attempts worldwide. I was proud of myself, Colonel, because I only had to Google a little bit of this list. A lot of this came off the top of the head. Its track record is stellar, obviously. Guatemala, Iran, Cuba, Cambodia, the Congo, Laos, Dominican Republic, Iraq, Cuba, British Guiana, Indonesia, Afghanistan, Nicaragua, Panama, Haiti, Yugoslavia, USA, the CIA with regime change. Someone reminded me, and shame on me for not putting this one in here. Ukraine.
Twice.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's, and you know what, though? I was saving characters because some of these I originally had ×4, ×2 next to some of these countries. But my point is, this is how the left looks at communism. Well, it's just never been done right. We're going to find that perfect country and that perfect setup, and communism is going to work this time. That's what it feels like with the damn CIA. It's like, well, we've just never overthrown a government perfectly. It can be done, and it will be a beautiful thing one of these days. We just need to find the right situation.
But hold on. You're assuming that they're just overthrowing the government because they don't like the government. That's not why we overthrow governments. Go through every one of those lists, and I can name the companies
yes,
that exploited the country in the aftermath of the coup.
You know, I am learning because yesterday when I heard that about the CIA in Venezuela, the first thing I thought, and I don't know if you'll be proud of me, but lie to me, I thought, which companies are benefiting from this? Which oil companies are going to be down there getting this natural resource? Was I on the mark?
Yeah. Well, the woman that just won the Nobel Peace Prize from there, that supposedly is the leading opposition force. Well, first of all, if Maduro is a dictator, how is she alive?
Mm-hmm.
They don't let oppositions live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's number one.
They'd say she's in hiding.
She's not in hiding. And number two, she was funded by USAID, which has been outed as a CIA front. She has gotten shit tons of money from the CIA.
Oh, no.
Yes. And she just did an interview that said if she's elected, she's going to open the oil market to U.S. corporations.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. Hang on, time out. Because when she won the Nobel Peace Prize, and I heard her name for the first time ever, Monday or whatever the hell day it was, that she was receiving that prize, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if she's because I didn't know anything. Is she a politician? Is she who the U.S. would like to see installed there? And then as the week plays out and we have President Trump referring to the CIA in Venezuela, and now I hear you saying this, shame on me for not knowing this, if she's elected, so what's her background? Like, what are we, what's this, is her background?
She's a USAID CIA stooge.
Okay, but I mean, is she involved in politics down there short of just wanting Maduro out? Like, I don't know anything about this woman.
In a minor way.
Okay.
So,
but she referenced being elected, possibly?
Yes.
Oh, damn. Okay, now it's so obvious. Holy crap.
Okay, so this is in a book called Corporate Coup, which I read and I wanted to pull it out. It's about Venezuela. Let me just read something to you. This is talking about 2017 in the original coup that Washington pulled off. This decision represented a new style of coup d'etat where Washington is not simply behind the action, but in front of it. Now, I would argue that's not true because they obviously don't know about all the ones I do. And using all possible means to achieve it. It was Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, himself, who confessed that U.S. oil companies were ready to come into Venezuela once Maduro was overthrown. In open confession of the corporate interests that drove the White House misguided strategy. They even came up with a name of the group called the Lima Group that was planning the overthrow. Led by none other than Mike Pompeo, eventually, because he was at the CIA and then State Department, and John Bolton.
Can we add this to John Bolton's rap sheet?
It should be. It won't be his only one.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think? I'm gonna again ask you unfairly to look into your crystal ball. Where do you see Venezuela ending up with all this nonsense?
I have no idea. There are people in Venezuela, just like every place. There's people that don't like Maduro, and there's people that like Maduro. Mm-hmm. They view the people that like Maduro believe that he is standing. It's like Assad in Syria, that he has stood the test of time against an onslaught from the United States. There are countries around the world that admire him for taking the beating, both politically, economically, and militarily, being cut off from the world and surviving. Because other countries have tried it. You know, Allende tried it in Chile and was overthrown. It was tried, as you mentioned, in Guatemala, and that government was overthrown. So it's very hard to take control back of your resources once the U.S. presence is in your country, and thwart them and survive. So the other people think he's, too heavy-handed, authoritarian, but you can't survive the attack from the United States and the CIA without having some measure of authoritarianism.
Is it a wonder why we're hated in so many parts of the world?
No. And the other thing, let me just, since I haven't said this on your show, as I pointed out earlier, 80% of the cocaine coming into the United States comes from Colombia. It has been written about, and I won't say extensively, but you can find it, that the CIA, and let me back up and just say this, since I already mentioned the Contras. The CIA purposely was taking Colombian cocaine, flying it into the United States, and created the crack epidemic in Southeast LA. That's been documented unequivocally.
Yes.
However, what they did with Barry Seal is landed a plane in Nicaragua, got off the airplane and took a picture of a bale of cocaine laying on the tarmac, put the bale back on the aircraft, and took off. So that there was a picture that the CIA could circulate and accuse the Nicaraguan government, which they were trying to actively overthrow, the Sandinistas, of being the drug traffickers.
Wow.
So knowing that, and then reading articles about, and books about the fact that the CIA, because they didn't like Chavez or Maduro, was trafficking cocaine secretly through Venezuela so that they could later state that Venezuela was the narco trafficker, when everyone knows even the cocaine coming out of Venezuela is from Colombia. All of it is coming from Colombia.
Let me ask you something. Is anything real? I mean, seriously, how much of that minutia was President Reagan? You know what? Don't. I'm just kidding. Do answer that. How much of this? And again, we're gonna get off if I allow us to. So, but I'm just curious. What percentage of that entire operation down there do you think he was aware of? And I already know the answer.
He was aware of all of it.
I knew it was going to be 100%. Yeah.
He had to sign a finding in order for the CIA to do any of the stuff that they were doing to overthrow the Nicaraguan government. He had to know.
Colonel comes with receipts, y'all. That's just good stuff.
Yeah. And the same thing in Angola. Most people, and then I love this response when I start pointing out that Reagan opened the border, gave amnesty to illegals. He tried to thwart the, I think it's called the MNT, which was a political group in Angola. And they financially backed and sicked the CIA on them. But he supported the United group only because it was corrupt and they could illicitly take out uranium from Angola, because they were on the border with the Congo, which we had overthrown and put a dictator in there too. So they were crafting a policy in Angola, and they used a crap ton of Cuban exiles in Angola. That had to have a finding for it as well. So I love the response. Well, that was all Bush. Reagan didn't know anything. Well, you can't have it both ways. If he's the best president we've ever had, and he didn't know a flipping thing that was going on in his administration, then he wasn't the best president in the whole world.
I think this is such a great comment from DB Cooter. If we were worried about fentanyl, we'd be bombing boats coming out of China.
Actually, let me correct that a little bit, because I learned a lot when I did my deep dive into Iran-Contra.
Okay.
So fentanyl, obviously fentanyl is a pharmaceutical drug. China makes actual fentanyl and sells it legally. What also is required to make fentanyl is a crap ton of chemicals. They sell those chemicals. But if you go back to Iran-Contra and the manufacturing of cocaine, I didn't know anything about cocaine. I've never done drugs. I never looked into any of this until I started doing this research project. So you take a coca leaf off of a plant. You take a whole bunch of coca leaves off of plants, and you add a crap ton of chemicals. I mean, it's like 3 or 4 different processes to get this gook out of the leaf. You have to have all kinds of chemicals. Well, do you know who was selling this crap ton of chemicals to Colombia? U.S. chemical corporations. And once it was figured out that you can't make cocaine without these chemicals, Congress finally acted and barred U.S. corporations from selling those chemicals. But they got rich off of it. DuPont, Dow, all of the chemical companies were all getting rich off of creating cocaine. And they knew what it was being used for, by the way. So when you look at the chemicals needed for fentanyl, the observation is absolutely correct. If the U.S. chemical corporations, which they did, by the way, went into joint deals in China, they can continue to profit off of the sale of chemicals, but leave the blame with China. So you can't ever look at anything, because none of this is black and white from that perspective. They're going to figure out a way to make a buck. That's what they do.
You know, let me ask you this question, and I have no idea how you're going to answer this. We're talking about the drug boats. We're talking about Venezuela. So from your perspective as a military and Air Force colonel, and also someone who doesn't like to see us meddling in other countries' affairs, where do you come down on the whole shooting those boats out of the water, the drug boats coming from Venezuela that Trump is very proud of?
Interesting question. So, and I'll be quite honest with you. My first reaction is, what the hell? Are you kidding me? There are entire ships. There's entire aircraft loaded with drugs coming out of Colombia. We know where they are. We know who they are. Why would you not target? Colombia, as it exists today, is a narco state. It is because it has oil, and the U.S. has the concessions for their oil. It is allowed to function that way because they don't want an independent government there, and they haven't had an independent government for decades. So I'm one of those people that just like to go straight to the heart of things. Just, if you want to meddle in Colombia, where 80% of the cocaine, you could designate it as a narco state. You could put a naval barricade around it and a no-fly zone, and you would overnight stop 80% of the cocaine coming into the United States. Did we do that? No.
No.
Okay. So
Uh,
what I do think, though, is that the interdiction, I view it more as kind of a warning order. So in the military, when you're getting ready to do something, there's a warning order that goes out for everybody to be prepared. So it was a very strong signal to the people that are trafficking drugs, especially at the lower levels. Don't do it. If they don't, so, and let me just explain this too. The waterway that goes up between Guyana and Venezuela is a maritime drug trafficking. They use indigenous Venezuelans that are literally poor. They don't even, the interaction between them and the government of Venezuela is almost zero. They kind of live in their own little world. They're very, very poor. You have Colombian traffickers that come up there. They start out, if you're a man in this indigenous area, you have a rowboat. You go out and fish and help feed your family. When you get enough fish and you sell enough, you get a little motor for your boat. And those boats that are coming out are like decked out big time. So in the past, the Colombians had paid in motors for these people, because once you get a whole bunch of motors, you're like big time in this village. The drug traffickers had bought these people motors to put on their fishing vessels under the guise of ferrying out either to Trinidad or a boat anchored off the coast these smaller loads of drugs. But again, they're all coming from Colombia. So if you look at it in its totality, what it tells me and what it would tell the narco trafficker is we have eyes on you. If I can pick out a little fishing boat in the middle of the ocean, I'm tracking everything you do. I know everything that you're doing. And believe me, that signal was heard.
So does it sound like we are indeed blowing fishing boats out of the water?
No, they had drugs on them.
They had drugs on them. Okay.
Because again, we have eyes. I can't even begin to tell people the capability, and not because it's classified, it's just hard to imagine. Our satellites can read your license plate number.
Mm-hmm.
They have the ability to literally track from the labs in Colombia, not Venezuela, in Colombia, to every place that cocaine goes. They have the ability to do that. And again, if you want to send a message and disrupt their activity, you can start small with a warning order.
Mm-hmm.
Then they can make choices. If they make bad choices, it's going to escalate.
Okay. Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch this thing unfold and the debate around it. Do you think that people like Rand Paul, senator, Republican senator, who has said, hey, just come and tell us, what you're basing this off of, as someone that's been a high-ranking military official such as yourself, is that a legitimate request, do you think, that an elected representative would like to know how we're exercising these war powers?
So most of all of these is briefed to the intel committees. Almost every operation is briefed to the.
And that's what I thought. And that's always seemed to be, to me, a reasonable expectation.
However,
but then you have people like a Patrick Leahy who gives up a Libyan bombing by our Air Force prematurely because he thinks that's cute and risks our servicemen.
So that was going to be my caveat.
Okay, sorry. I'll let the guest speak. I apologize.
No, you were exactly right. Kudos.
Right. So it's like we can't trust our elected officials to keep their damn mouths shut. So that's the delicate balance here. And you know who loses in the end? are young boys and girls, and I don't like that. And so that's where, what do you do here?
Correct.
I mean, there's no win situation. You want your representatives to be clued in as per law, but do you trust them? I would trust Rand Paul not to run to the press, but I wouldn't trust a Chuck Schumer not to run to the press. And
but
so
Rand Paul's not on the Intelligence Committee.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that
they're not going to put anybody on the Intelligence Committee that's not compromised. Come on.
Oh gosh, it never ends. Do you know off the top of your head any trust? So I think you already answered.
Adam Schiff was on the Intelligence Committee, for God's sake.
That's fair. That's fair. Wasn't Swalwell too?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. So I don't know. I don't know how you satisfy that requirement then, without risking lives, American lives, I should say. Oh, what a mess. Okay. So obviously our nation has a long history of attempting to change governments. I mean, this goes back well before the CIA. Shout out to Grover Cleveland for trying to stop Hawaii from being taken over. But I mean, this goes back a century and a half, at least, in our country. But let's transition here to Operation PatCon, which is what you discussed the last time you were on with us, and how that is kind of what's happening with Arctic frost. And since the last time when we spoke, we had the little detail that Chuck Grassley gave us of I think it was the 9 U.S. senators where the FBI, the Biden FBI, was tapping the phones of U.S. senators, Marsha Blackburn, Lindsey Graham, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Lummis, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, all Republicans being spied on by Democrat administration's FBI. Talk to us about that new little detail and some other stuff you'd like to say about PatCon that we didn't get to last time you were with us.
Well, let's do PatCon first, and we'll kind of close that up, because I think you're going to see the natural transition to Arctic frost. Okay. So kind of where we left off, PatCon was an FBI operation. And by the way, don't think that they're different. The CIA's had people working inside of the FBI. The FBI worked hand in hand with the DEA and the CIA to cover up Iran-Contra. So they're like peas in a pod. So I want to start with this. This is a quote. I think they played a lot of people against each other. This is one of the people involved in PatCon. The guys hated them more and more for it. They thought Big Brother was moving in on them. Unquote. Talking about people inside of the actual honest patriot groups that were just meeting. Mm-hmm. They didn't have anything nefarious, but PatCon infiltrated legitimate gun clubs and everything else. And it made everybody paranoid and hated their government, which we know is part of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. In addition to the complexities of the observer effect, in which the act of observing something causes changes in the subject of observation, the PatCon investigation highlights several critical issues. 1, reinforcing grievances. As with many other radical movements, patriot ideology evolves around a belief that the U.S. government is fundamentally at war with the people. And interviews that were conducted post-PatCon reinforce that. Patriots frequently pointed out the use of infiltrators, often characterized as agent provocateurs, as a key grievance with operational concern. An example can be found in the Patriot ideologue Louis Bream's infamous track called Leaderless Resistance, like Antifa, a strategy that is predicated on the threat of infiltration. The idea of a war footing is strongly reinforced by violent confrontations such as Ruby Ridge. which was sparked by a conflict over infiltration because they were trying to recruit him to be an informant, and he refused. Also, Waco had been infiltrated by the DEA. Another one, intelligence versus prosecution. Much less has been written about the conflict between the roles of the FBI as an intelligence gathering operation and as a criminal investigation unit. FBI rules stipulate that investigations have to be predicated on crimes, a requirement heightened in investigations of domestic extremism where First Amendment comes into play. There was never an alleged crime, ever. In dealing with headquarters, PatCon supervisors had to continually justify the operation and its funding based on incidents. So do you think there's going to be incidents if your entire thing is predicated on that? Yes. Were they actually incidents? No. So throughout PatCon's history, the nominal justification for the operation shifted several times. An investigation strayed far from its stated pretext, continually expanding to encompass additional targets of opportunity. And let me just say, the original crime that they said wasn't even their jurisdiction. It was a bunch of Army guys at Fort Hood that had stolen night vision goggles. They were under investigation by the Army Criminal Investigations Unit. The FBI swoops in and uses that investigation as a pretext to open PatCon. It was already being investigated. So literally no one was ever prosecuted under PatCon because there were no crimes. And they basically created the pretext for it using an investigation. And not only that, the FBI thwarted the Army's criminal investigation of their own people by getting involved and hiding evidence from them. So,
That goes back to my earlier question. Is anything real?
No. And I'm going to top it off with this, because this really is kind of the cherry on the top of how ridiculous this is. Timothy McVeigh literally drove through the middle of PatCon's investigation. He touched almost every aspect of it. And never, ever, McVeigh interacted with members and associates of targeted groups that had been infiltrated by the FBI. But there is not a single shred of evidence collected by PatCon that ever talked about Timothy McVeigh in the lead up while it was still going on to the Oklahoma bombing.
Yeah, I know this. Yeah. What the hell is that?
Yeah. So, if you start looking at the civil liberties involved in all of this, and then you fast forward to the Biden administration, where they were using the FBI to surveil parents going to school board meetings. None of that's new. It's like people have institutional blank slates, like every crisis is something that just happened. No, there is a long laundry list of FBI abuses.
That's a fact. Okay. And I mean, is this a good place to transition into this No Kings stuff? Because we got another one of those coming this weekend, and a lot of people theorize that Democrats don't want to open up the government before they have to face their rabid followers in the streets of American cities. What are your thoughts on? Talk to us about this No Kings stuff.
So, well, obviously, the first thing you look at is who funds it. And you have, and again, one, we didn't hit on it today, but we did originally. The funding sources for all of the strategy of tension comes through, in large part, the foundations, whether it was the Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller foundations of the past. And Rockefeller's still involved in it today, and so is Carnegie and Ford. But you look at Soros as kind of the new guy on the block compared to some of the original foundations. And I like pull my hair out when people constantly focus on Soros, because it literally comes from all of them. They launder their money through 3 or 4 different organizations in order to continue this strategy of tension. So the entire premise is that they're accusing Trump of being a king and a dictator, and that we don't want one. Well, we just saw video of the ICE facility taking down the fence because of a court order. Do you know of any king that even has a judicial system, let alone pay attention to them?
I hear you.
So the premise that Trump is acting extrajudicially in doing anything he has done, he has went through the painstaking steps every single time that his authority has been questioned, and it has 100% been upheld at the Supreme Court. And so under no circumstances is Trump acting as a dictator. And then they like to call him a Nazi. Okay, well, for rounding up ICE, and let me just real quick give you the one-liner. Hitler killed Germans. He didn't kill other people first. He murdered millions of Germans, his own citizens, and put them in labor camps. Trump is legally compelled by his oath to enact laws or to carry out laws that were enacted by Congress. So we have laws on the books that says if you overstay your visa, you get deported. If you come to the United States illegally, you get deported. So he's in effect carrying out his lawful duties. He is not attacking Americans. He's not killing Americans in the street. There is literally no similarities between Hitler and Trump. If Trump was actually a king or acting like a dictator, he'd just send the military in, round everybody up, and put anybody that was aiding and abetting in jail.
Yeah.
It would be over in a week.
Yeah. And he would be ignoring these court orders that don't even allow him to eliminate federal jobs. And to your point, that's kind of like Antifa, anti-fascist, when, oh my gosh, if you have a differing opinion of theirs, the fascist really comes out, doesn't it?
So they are guilty of murdering people. They have murdered people. There was a murder, I think it was in Utah last year at the No Kings rally. So they're not peaceful. And the idea that you can name something anti-fascist and it actually be anti-fascist is an oxymoron in and of itself. What am I going to call myself if I'm actually a fascist? Hey, I got a great idea. Let me use the name anti-fascist so that I can deny that I'm a fascist even though I act like one.
Right. I mean, that's what... if you want to really scope this out, I mean, that's what the left does. They always are doing what they are accusing the other side of. A bill in Congress.
Why would you call Medicare for All or...
I was just about to say, a bill in Congress.
Affordable Care Act. Why would you call it, I'm going to F up your health care? That's a better name for it.
That's exactly what the next words out of my mouth. That was going to be that the bills in Congress are always named the opposite of what they do.
Yeah, the Consumer Protection Act did not protect consumers.
Right. So when you were talking about No Kings on your Twitter feed, which, by the way, shame on me, I didn't mention this earlier. Follow her at Colonel Towner on X. Who's Gene Sharp?
Oh my gosh. Holy crap. So CIA front.
Of course.
And that's how I found him. What Antifa is a Gene Sharp project. So anybody that wants to look up Gene Sharp, you will
I've never heard that name in my life.
You will find him at the Albert Einstein Institute.
So he's alive. He's someone
No,
right now.
he's dead now.
No. Okay.
But it's still going on.
Okay.
And
Gene
it's still
Sharp.
doing exactly what he intended it to do.
And when was he active? This Gene Sharp?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Just
but
curious.
Through the like 80s, 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So this has been going on for a while.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like this No Kings thing didn't just materialize out of thin air. This has been something that's been under a different name or what before?
No, it's a different name every country that you do it. And every time you do it in a different country, because they want to pretend like it's some brand new grassroots effort.
Wow, he died in 2018. Wow, okay.
So what they do, what he taught them to do, and if you go to that website, it will dumbfound you. They have videos of the people that led the efforts in places like Bosnia, all over the world. They bring the leader in and they're in this little classroom and they brag about doing it. So basically, and they're on the website. Well, they maybe not now because I exposed them about a year and a half ago. But
and this is the Albert Einstein?
Albert Einstein Institute.
Okay.
So he had, and I'm not going to remember his name, a colonel from the Army, a Green Beret guy, specifically trained in psychological operations. He brings him into the Institute, and together they come up with a system of how to train young people to do government overthrows. So they are like the stormtroopers. They are the jackboots or the brown shirts of the Nazi thing, not Hitler's Youth, whatever you want to call it. So they go in and they foment revolution by chaos. They get in front of government buildings like Antifa does.
It sounds familiar.
Yes. And if you watch these videos and you listen to them tell how they did this, it is exactly what is going on here. So I highly encourage you. And he's done it all over the world while he was alive.
It is fascinating. Cloward and Piven come to mind. It's just fascinating how many evil geniuses, I guess is the best way to describe this, that there have been in American history of people whose sole existence is to destroy this nation. And so many of them get elected. So many of them end up in the CIA. No, it's like, how does this...
Cloward and Piven, all they did, there was nothing original in their book. It's just codifying what the CIA did. They just didn't say that.
Are you going to tell me that Saul Alinsky was connected to the CIA?
I don't know of any actual connections, but he definitely did the same thing.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Okay. There's been a big fuss that's been building, it's reaching a crescendo now with, I guess, the press rules, press credentials over at the Pentagon. Now, here's how I interpreted this, and then I always love to get your military perspective. I heard this, and it sounded reasonable. The way I understood it was War Secretary Pete Hegseth was saying that, look, we're not going to let you wander around the Pentagon unfettered. We're not going to let you see which generals are meeting with which generals and which room they're going into. It sounded reasonable to me. Then yesterday, a little bit of a hiccup, at least in my mind, when I heard that Newsmax, a right-leaning organization, was also not agreeing to those new rules with the Pentagon press passes. In fact, now there's a video of these journalists walking out of the Pentagon, and they're like, well, I guess I'm not going to be covering this anymore. It seemed reasonable to me. I don't know all of the details. I'm hoping that you have a perspective that I haven't thought of. What are your thoughts on this?
So, to me, if you read through, I think it's 17 pages long. It was posted online. I read through it. And there's been journalists that actually came out and said, yeah, we go there to look for leaks. They go there to solicit people to share information that should not be shared, like the fact that generals are meeting there, or like the fact that, hey, SIGCOM is coming to town, or stuff like that. Things that are not normally shared with. They will go to the concourse in the Pentagon and eavesdrop on people's conversations.
Oh my goodness. That sounds like John Quincy Adams did when he was in the House of Representatives. He would act like he was sleeping all day. People thought he was a lazy SOB, but the acoustics where his seat was in Congress allowed him to hear every conversation in the House. So that sounds like what's happening over the Pentagon.
So if you have an honest press corps that goes into the Pentagon, it's a press briefing, and can exhaustively ask every question they want of the person being paid to communicate with the press. What else do you want? Right. That's not what they want. They want to be able to be given a card, a cat card, that allows them to walk around the Pentagon and do whatever the hell they want. You can't go to the CIA and walk around unescorted.
This just seems like common sense.
It is common sense. But in the past, both parties, to control the media, puts stories out there in order to keep us divided. So you have a press office in the Pentagon who is responsible for giving the Pentagon's public information out. And the fact that and I don't care about, as far as I'm concerned, I don't watch Newsmax on a regular basis. Every time that I've ever watched them, what they are telling me is a story and not the story. I don't put Newsmax in any other, they're a gatekeeper. They're a gatekeeper for the right, but they're still a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And so I'm not at all surprised that they joined with their peers, because back in the past, whenever anything happened of journalists being squashed, whether it was what's her name, Cheryl
Atkinson.
Yes. Newsmax was nowhere to be found. If you're actually interested in free speech is an access to government secrets or confidential. And the problem that I have with all of this from a military perspective is you have captains and majors in the Pentagon. You have junior enlisted people in the Pentagon. They're not savvy to press. They don't know that sitting in the lunch line or walking, being in the bathroom or whatever, and having a conversation with an office mate may be sharing information about something that's completely inappropriate, because they don't know there's press people walking around the building. They think we're all in this building together and it's just us.
Wow.
So the thought that having someone isolated to a particular area of the Pentagon to actually be able to freely ask questions of people who are professionally prepared to ask those questions is absolutely ridiculous to think that that's a bad thing.
Do you have any idea, Colonel, how long this has been going on, where this unfettered access, because I'm like you.
It was going on in the 90s when I was there.
Say that again?
It was going on in the 90s when I was there.
See, I think we both value free speech and freedom of the press, but we also value national security. And that just seems like a no-brainer.
It allows them to play games, because if you know that they have access inside the Pentagon, they can make the story up out of whole cloth and say officials in the Pentagon said. Well, if the only officials you're allowed to talk to is the press briefing room, then you can't do that anymore.
again, this one, I try to approach everything that I discuss. I try to see, what angle, and it's impossible to do this. You can't do this exercise with Elon Omar. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's like, what is the other side of this? And all I can think of is it's a selfish reporter that wants to be able to shine and tell a story, and like you said, create unnecessary divisiveness, because
and it would be a different thing if any of those news outlets actually didn't lie.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
The main complainers is Washington Post, New York Times, all of those guys. They lie for a living. They were outed in the 70s as having CIA people working in their organizations posing as journalists and allowing the CIA to edit their journalism.
That is a fact. Yes. Okay. So it's not just me being a sensitive new military dad. It's me just being this is just common sense. But see, and that's just it. Common sense doesn't have a pulse in too many places anymore. Okay. Are there other things that you've been covering lately on the Colonel's Corner or on X that you've been talking about that you would want to share with us today? Because I felt I would, if there was something pressing, that you wanted to get to, I want to give you some time here. Unless you think we've covered everything today.
Yeah, I think we definitely covered it. And I just also want to thank you for doing that. I spend 99% of my time in history. And that's what we do normally at 4:00 every day, Monday through Friday, is we go through books, historical accurate books.
I screw up your day. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I would gladly screw up my day for this, because it's the rare opportunity for me to take all of the practical historical knowledge I have and apply it to things that are happening today. I don't normally do that for lots of different reasons, but I love doing it. So I can't thank you enough for running through all of that, because I think it's so important to understand the historical relevance, because everybody that doesn't do what I've done for the last 3 years in these deep dives into our history, look at everything with tunnel vision on, and say, this is the first time this has ever happened.
Right.
And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. And explain, just for those that aren't familiar. I mean, you just basically just started reading books and educating yourself and realizing, holy crap, there's a whole different history that I wasn't aware of.
So actually, I have over 600 books that I've read throughout my career. I'm a nonfiction reader. I always have been. I never don't have a book. What the difference was 3 years ago is I stumbled across Operation Gladio. And while I have all of the information, and I mean, I have everybody's bios. I have George Washington's, I have all the way up through, George Bush Jr. and Condoleezza Rice and Donald Rumsfeld. I've read all of their books that was written about their life. So I had all of this information floating around in my head, but it was just random. If you could look at one of those like mirror boards, it was just a whole bunch of arrays. But when I found Operation Gladio and realized that every single event is orchestrated and why it was orchestrated, it allowed me to take all of this random information and connect dots. It allowed me to connect Condoleezza Rice to all of the stuff like on 9/11, and I know what her history is. And it allowed me to connect George Bush Sr. with his previous CIA that supposedly didn't exist, but it did, back in the 50s and 60s, that supposedly, he's the only CIA director up to that time that had never been in the CIA. That's a bold-faced lie. And so again, it allowed me, and I used the analogy, it was like having a skeleton placed in a room that I could go and take all of my pieces of data and put them on the body. So I could put the heart where it belonged. I could put the blood vessels connecting all of the different organs together. And for the first time, it allowed me to make sense of all of that information. But since then, I think the last time I counted, it was 122 books in the last 3 years just on the CIA.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so you just made me think of something. I'm going to put you on the spot here. And if you don't have an answer, that's totally fine. But you mentioned George Bush Sr. Do we have, and I honestly, I do not know. Do we have a good answer as to why George Bush Sr. was in downtown Dallas in close proximity to JFK's assassination on November 22nd, 1963? Or is it just a quirk in history, or do you have no idea what I'm even referring to?
No, I mean, obviously, for people who don't know, there was a telephone call made just prior to the assassination that was reporting a crime. And supposedly it was George Bush, which put him like an hour outside of Dallas.
I thought he was a lot closer. I'm sorry. I thought he was down in there.
No, he was.
Yeah.
But prior to that, there was a phone call.
Okay. I'm sorry.
And the phone call was supposedly made at a time to Houston to report a crime that had already happened, and there was no emergency involved in it. But it allowed him to try to pinpoint where he was, which would have made it physically impossible for him to be in Dallas based on the time the phone call was made. But what most people don't understand that's reading this kind of stuff today is we didn't have call ID. We didn't have the ability to trace phone calls at that point. And so he literally could have been from anywhere making that phone call. So anybody that says, oh no, there was this phone call and he had an alibi and all this other stuff, he did not. And he was physically identified as being present for the assassination. But let me say this, because this is a little known fact that I don't hear. I have never heard anyone else say this. And I read it in a book that had to do, because obviously looking at the international syndicate and why they do all of these things, you have to go back, and oil and pipelines and stuff like that is obviously a big deal. So I was reading a book just to give me some historical reference on oil deals, old oil deals, like back in the 30s and 40s and stuff like that. And I ran across one of the most amazing things. So Alan Dulles, when he worked for Sullivan and Cromwell as a lawyer, and everybody knows he's the famous CIA director that was in charge of the CIA when JFK was assassinated. He also ran the investigation committee.
Not a good guy. Not a good guy.
Right. So he was fired by JFK and then somehow gets assigned to look into the investigation as a disgruntled prior employee. I don't know why anybody would do that, but he did. And so Alan Dulles, when he was a lawyer at Sullivan and Cromwell, and Sullivan and Cromwell was one of the lawyers that orchestrated all of the international syndicates' legal dealings around the world, especially relating to oil. So Alan Dulles gets deployed over to Baku, Azerbaijan, big oil field. The Nobel family, the same one that's the Nobel Peace Prize, that's a military industrial complex guy that invented dynamite.
Dynamite, yeah.
And is all warfare, made his wealth in wars relating to oil.
It's so ironic, isn't it?
So, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So, he owns an oil field in Baku, Azerbaijan. Rockefeller is going to buy that oil field. He sends Alan Dulles from Sullivan and Cromwell to work that deal. The Nobel agent on the ground was George de Morgenshield's father. George de Morgenshield is like 10 years old when Alan Dulles first meets him. And he becomes very close with the De Morgenschildt family, and because they're in the oil business, and he does oil as an attorney. Fast forward to nobody in the Bush family is involved in oil, but Bush Sr. just all of a sudden moves to Texas and is in the oil industry, right? Bush Jr. is in the oil, but they don't make any money ever. Everybody else gets magnificently wealthy in the oil industry, but these two struggle because neither one of them were in the oil business to make money. They used their oil businesses as CIA fronts. And you can specifically say that about George Bush Sr. because of his dealings with Mexico and the fact that he created these mobile platforms that coincidentally happened to train mercenaries for the CIA on them, and you could move them around, and they were launching operations into Cuba from them. So George de Morgenschildt grows up, and he just happens to be the guy in Dallas that takes Lee Harvey Oswald and his wife into his home.
Hold on, I have a question. Perhaps you've heard me ask it before. Is anything real? I just want... No, okay. Cool. Here we are. I swear, man, everything is... There's such a web, man. Everything is a damn web of evil. Okay, well, let me just, before we go, I just want to point out that, yes, I must have been drunk when I typed today's title. It looks like the Knights Who Say Knee caught that I put 2023. Wait, you're laughing. You caught that too? Did you see? And you didn't tell me, Colonel?
No, I didn't see it. I'm just
okay.
laughing because you said you
okay, I'm just making sure. Because I did change the title when I caught it, which was about an hour into today's show. So I don't know when or if the 25 that I changed it from 23 if that's ever going to show up. But yeah, this has been a hell of a show if it was 2 years prior. Okay. Before we go, I want to remind everyone, please follow Colonel Towner on X, and then on Rumble, it's the Colonel's Corner. And in fact, I got a fancy thing here. If you want to, I don't know why Rumble does it this way. They're fun over there. There's the channel number there, but just type in the Colonel's Corner over at Rumble and you'll find her. Does some great stuff over there with book reviews and everything, or you wouldn't call them reviews, more like book studies, I guess, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now, as for this show, obviously on Fridays, we're just going to do the hangout tomorrow like we normally do with Brad and Rebecca until Rebecca gives birth, and then I have no idea what we're going to do. But I just want to preview the next 3 shows real quick here. On November 6th, I'm going to work my way back. November 6th, we're going to get an update on how election integrity is looking with Jovan Pulitzer. That's going to be, because we're about a year out from the midterms. Anything better? On October 30th, we got a great a ghost, almost the spiritual element of ghosts and stuff with Tom Carr, our resident ghost hunter, joining us yet again here on the program. And then I'm working my way back here. October 23rd, a week from today, I have no idea. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. For 7 months, I've been chasing a guest. I don't think this guy's ever going to respond to me. So damn it, you may just have me next week telling you this amazing story from 100 years ago in American history. If I can't get him, then I'm going to tell the story. And it could absolutely suck. But I hope you'll join me a week from today. But maybe he'll come through and finally respond to my emails or what have you. Okay, Colonel, thank you so much for making time. It's enlightening as always whenever you join us. It's just fascinating stuff, and I look forward to the next time we talk. So
let me also let everybody know I'm on Substack as well at the Colonel's Corner.
Okay.
I do deep dives into areas that are kind of tangentially associated with Operation Gladio. But when I have to go off on a side to do a deep dive to make something make sense to myself, I try to capture that and put it on Substack. So like the privatization of prisons and what happened to the gold. And stuff like that, so that I can make it make sense. I just try to capture it over there. So there's some really interesting stuff over there too.
Okay, substack.com, the Colonel's Corner over there. Awesome. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was not aware. Okay, everyone will jump back on here in 22 hours. Until then, please be safe. Don't trust anything, and know that the answer to if something bad's happening in the world, what would you say the odds to the answer to that question? Hey, why does this thing suck? Is the answer 90% of the time it's the CIA? What would you say?
If it involves death, I would increase that to probably 95%.
Oh, I love it. Good stuff. All right. Thank you so much, Colonel. We will talk to you again soon. Be safe, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.